Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be looking at Fox News.
Fox News.
All the controversies surrounding it.
Lots of
over the years.
Yeah, tons.
And specifically, we're going to be looking at this excerpt of a Wikipedia article that you sent over.
Okay.
And it's got a lot of allegations and lawsuits and criticisms against the network.
Mm-hmm.
Really heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think instead of, kind of jumping right to any conclusions,
Right.
the goal is to really understand like the breadth of these controversies and kind of what they say about Fox News as an organization.
Yeah.
About the media landscape in general, and maybe even about how we all consume information these days.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not about telling you what to think.
Exactly.
It's about giving you the information to form your own conclusions.
Totally.
So let's just jump right in. I think one of the first things that really jumps out at you is this constant accusation that Fox News favors the Republican Party in their reporting.
It's a recurring theme for sure, and it kind of pops up in some pretty significant ways.
Huh.
If you think about like prominent Democrats boycotting some of their events,
Right.
Or, even the Democratic National Committee refusing to let Fox News host any of their primary debates.
Wow, yeah.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
When a major political party just won't work with you,
Yeah,
it says a lot about how deeply these perceptions of bias run.
for sure, for sure. And it's interesting, and when you think about the broader context of media bias in the U.S.,
Right.
studies have shown that people tend to view media bias through like the lens of their own political affiliations.
Right.
So in other words, Democrats are more likely to see Fox News as biased towards Republicans, while Republicans are more likely to see, let's say, MSNBC as leaning towards the Democrats.
So we're all predisposed to see the other side as the biased one.
Yeah, and it's not to say that bias doesn't exist. It's just that like how we perceive it is so tied into like what we already believe.
Right. Well, and there's this quote from David Frum, the speechwriter for George W. Bush.
Oh, yeah.
That really makes you think. He said, Republicans originally thought that Fox worked for us, and now we're discovering we work for Fox.
That's a good quote.
What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely provocative, and it really gets to the heart of Fox News's potential influence. Like, beyond just reflecting certain viewpoints, are they actually shaping them? It really raises a lot of questions about the dynamics between the media and the political landscape.
Like, who's really in control here?
Exactly. Is it a two-way street, or is it kind of more a one-way influence?
Okay, so you've got this whole undercurrent of alleged bias, and then comes the 2020 election.
Right.
And these huge defamation lawsuits.
Oh, yeah, those were big.
Filed against Fox News by Dominion Voting Systems and Smartmatic.
Those were unprecedented.
Yeah.
Like, you have these voting machine companies accusing Fox News of knowingly promoting false claims about election rigging.
Right.
Which is explosive enough.
Yeah.
But the real kicker is why they were alleging that they were doing that.
Yeah, they were doing it to boost ratings, which, unfortunately isn't all that surprising.
No, not really.
In the media world. But I mean, the financial stakes involved were insane. Dominion was seeking $1.6 billion in damages.
Wow.
And Smartmatic, a whopping $2.7 billion.
That's wild. It's not, chump change, right?
No.
Like, they're alleging some serious wrongdoing here.
Yeah, for sure. And then some of the internal communications from Fox News that were revealed during those lawsuits were really eye-opening.
Yeah.
There were instances where, like, fax figures were privately questioning the claims that they were broadcasting.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, and even ridiculing them.
Oh, wow.
So, like, that disconnect between what they're saying publicly and what they're saying or what they're thinking privately is pretty huge.
It's a big deal, for sure.
Like, if you knew that these claims were shaky, why broadcast them at all? Was it just a conscious decision to prioritize a certain narrative over factual reporting?
Right.
Because, let's be honest, these claims about a stolen election really fueled the fire of distrust in our democratic process.
Oh, they definitely played a role in shaping the post-election narrative.
Sure.
And then ultimately, of course, in April 2023, Fox News settled with Dominion for $787.5 million.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Now, legally speaking, of course, it's not an admission of guilt, but
it definitely speaks volumes.
Yeah, what kind of evidence did Dominion have to compel Fox to agree to that kind of settlement?
Right. It makes you think. And what's even more concerning is that these lawsuits point to a larger pattern of accusations against Fox News.
Okay.
About content manipulation and misinformation.
How they're presenting the information.
Yeah. And it's not just about the stories they choose to cover.
Right.
We're talking about instances where they've been accused of altering images, taking video clips out of context,
Wow.
even creating misleading segments.
Like they're actively trying to control the narrative.
Yeah, and this manipulation can have a huge impact on how people perceive events.
Oh, for sure.
And it's not just a few isolated incidents either.
Right.
I mean, remember when they doctored photos of those New York Times reporters to make them look bad?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Or when they showed footage from a McCain-Palin rally
Uh-huh.
and tried to pass it off as this huge turnout for a Sarah Palin book signing?
Oh, wow.
And let's not forget how they misrepresented crowd sizes at protests to fit their narrative.
Yeah, it's a pretty troubling pattern.
It is. And it ties into this broader issue of misinformation and this, declining trust in the media.
Totally. We live in a world where it's harder than ever to tell what's true and what's not.
Right.
And when a news source that people trust is accused of, manipulating information, it just makes it even more difficult for everyone to sort through all the noise.
Especially when you consider that a lot of people rely on a single news source for their information.
Oh, yeah.
So if that source is deliberately distorting reality, it can really warp your understanding of the world.
Totally. It's like they're seeing the world through a funhouse mirror with everything twisted and distorted.
And that's scary because this type of manipulation can have real-world consequences.
Oh, absolutely. We saw that play out in a big way with their coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Huge controversy.
Huge one. And a particularly sensitive one because it, directly impacts public health.
Oh, for sure. And initially, they seemed to take cues from the Trump administration downplaying the severity of the virus.
Okay.
I remember them comparing it to the flu, saying there's nothing to worry about.
Right.
And also amplifying some of the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that were circulating at the time. It's interesting to think about how that early coverage might have influenced people's perceptions of the pandemic and their willingness to take precautions.
Absolutely. And as the pandemic worsened, their coverage did shift somewhat.
Okay.
But some hosts continued to push misinformation about things like masks,
right,
vaccines, and treatments.
Contradicting public health experts.
Yeah, and that kind of mixed messaging really muddied the waters for a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely. Because if you have someone you trust, like a news anchor, telling you that masks are ineffective or vaccines are dangerous,
right,
it can really impact your decision-making.
Good.
And this wasn't just speculation or opinion. There's actually research that shows a link between watching certain Fox News shows and an increase in COVID-19 cases and deaths.
Wait, really?
Yeah, economists from the University of Chicago, Harvard, and other institutions conducted a study and found that in areas where Sean Hannity's show was popular, there were more COVID-19 cases and deaths compared to areas where Tucker Carlson's show was popular.
So even on the same network,
yeah,
different messaging had different effects.
Yeah, different effects. It makes you think about the real-world impact of the information we consume.
Wow, that's sobering.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The allegations of bias, the lawsuits, the content manipulation, the controversial COVID-19 coverage.
Yeah.
And it's clear that these are really complex issues, and they raise serious questions about the role of Fox News in shaping public opinion.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the information you provided only touches on a few of the controversies surrounding Fox News.
Right. We're going to dive into some of those other controversies in our next segment.
Yeah, there's a lot more to unpack here. For instance, your source material mentions several accusations of sexism and sexual harassment within Fox News.
Right.
And this isn't just about, individual cases or anything like that. It points to a larger question about the network's culture.
Yeah, like what kind of environment allows this behavior to flourish, and what message does it send to viewers, especially women, about how women are treated within the organization?
Exactly.
Big questions.
Big questions. And we can't forget about specific personalities like Glenn Beck. His time at Fox News was marked by a lot of controversy with his often inflammatory rhetoric and promotion of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it seemed like he really pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable on cable news. Some people praised him for his boldness, while others condemned him for spreading misinformation and fear.
It really highlights that tension between, attracting viewers with provocative content and maintaining journalistic standards.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance.
It is.
And speaking of controversial topics, let's talk about Fox News' approach to covering sensitive issues like immigration, terrorism, and race.
Okay.
These are all areas where the network has faced significant criticism, with accusations of fear-mongering and biased reporting. Critics argue that Fox News often frames these issues in a way that reinforces certain narratives and stereotypes.
Right.
Like focusing on the dangers posed by immigrants or Muslims while downplaying the systemic issues that contribute to these problems.
It's all about understanding how those choices in framing and emphasis can shape public perceptions.
It's about connecting the dots. How does the way these issues are presented on Fox News influence public discourse and policy decision?
Exactly. And it kind of brings us back to this crucial idea of media literacy.
Okay.
In today's complex media landscape, we can't just passively absorb information.
Right.
We need to be active participants, questioning what we see and hear, considering multiple perspectives.
So how do we become more media literate? Give us some practical tips.
Okay, well, one key strategy is to diversify your media diet.
Okay.
Don't rely on a single source for your news. Seek out a variety of perspectives, even ones you disagree with.
So read that newspaper you normally wouldn't pick up.
Yeah.
Listen to a podcast from a different political viewpoint.
Exactly. It's about challenging your own assumptions. Another important tip is to be critical of headlines and sensationalized language.
Okay.
Remember, a lot of media outlets, including Fox News, are businesses. They want to attract viewers, and that often means using attention-grabbing techniques.
Like those clickbait headlines that make you want to click, even if you know it's probably going to be something outrageous.
Exactly. Don't fall for the hype. Look beyond the headlines. And ask yourself, what are the facts here? What evidence is being presented?
Right.
And what might be missing from this story?
It's like becoming your own personal fact checker.
Yes, exactly. And how do we differentiate between actual news reporting and opinion programming?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because that line seems to be getting blurrier these days.
For sure.
News reporting should strive to present factual information.
Okay.
While opinion programming is inherently subjective,
Right.
be aware of which you're consuming and be wary of shows that present opinion as fact.
So those late-night shouting matches on cable news might not be the best source of objective truth.
Probably not. Another important point. Even within news reporting, there's a spectrum of quality and reliability.
It's not all created equal.
Right. Look for outlets with a solid track record of accuracy, fact-checking, and accountability.
Do your research. Check the source. It's a lot of work to be an informed citizen.
It is, but think of it as an investment in your own understanding of the world.
Okay.
And, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
Be wary of information that confirms your biases too easily.
Right.
We all have a tendency to seek out information that supports what we already believe.
It's comforting to stay in our comfort zones, but it doesn't help us grow.
Exactly. Challenge yourself. Seek out different viewpoints. You might be surprised by what you learn.
It's like that saying, the truth will set you free, but first it might make you uncomfortable.
I love that. And ultimately, it's not about having all the answers.
Right.
It's about embracing the process of learning and critical thinking.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think this journey towards greater media literacy is more important than ever in our current media landscape.
Yeah, we've talked about the controversies surrounding Fox News. But let's be honest, they're not the only ones facing these accusations of bias or spreading misinformation.
Absolutely not. This is a systemic issue that impacts the entire media ecosystem.
Wow.
We need to be aware of these challenges, regardless of our political affiliations or preferred news sources.
Yeah.
We're all susceptible to bias, and we all have a responsibility to be critical thinkers.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a moment and think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What are the main takeaways from all of this?
Well, I think one major theme that emerges is the complex and often blurry relationship between the media and politics.
Okay.
Fox News has undoubtedly played a significant role in shaping the political landscape, especially within the Republican Party.
Remember that quote we discussed earlier about Republicans realizing they work for Fox?
Oh, yeah.
That really struck a chord.
It did. And those lawsuits from Dominion and Smartmatic highlight the serious consequences of spreading misinformation, particularly when it concerns something as vital as our democracy.
And it also raises questions about the role of profit in the media.
Absolutely. Ratings and revenue often drive editorial decisions, even if it means sacrificing journalistic standards.
So it's this constant struggle between the ideals of a free and independent press and the reality that media outlets are also businesses with bottom lines to consider.
It's a difficult balance to strike, but I think it starts with recognizing the problem acknowledging the influence of money and politics on the media, and demanding better from the sources we rely on for information.
So it's up to us, the consumers, to be more discerning and hold these media outlets accountable.
Exactly. And that's precisely why media literacy is so vital.
Yeah.
It empowers us to navigate this complex and often confusing landscape.
Right.
It helps us identify bias, recognize misinformation, and ultimately make more informed decisions about the information we consume and share.
It's about taking control of our own information intake, instead of being passively bombarded by whatever's thrown at us.
Exactly. And that's a powerful step towards becoming more informed and engaged citizens.
So we've outlined the problems and emphasized the importance of media literacy. But I want to leave our listeners with something tangible, something they can do right now to become more informed and engaged.
I like that. What do you have in mind?
Well, we've already talked about diversifying your media diet.
Yeah.
But I think it's also crucial to engage in respectful dialogue with people who hold different views.
Oh, that's a good one.
Step outside your echo chamber and talk to people who disagree with you.
That's a great point. It's easy to dismiss or demonize people we disagree with.
For sure.
But true understanding comes from listening to each other, even when it's challenging.
And who knows, you might even learn something new. You might even find some common ground.
You might even change your mind. And that, I think, is the essence of true intellectual growth.
Okay, so we're encouraging our listeners to be critical thinkers, to diversify their sources, and to engage in respectful dialogue. Any final thoughts before we wrap up part 2 of this deep dive?
I think it's important to remember that this is just the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah.
The controversies surrounding Fox News are complicated and multifaceted.
For sure.
And there's always more to explore and consider.
It's an invitation to keep learning, to keep questioning, and to keep seeking out information from diverse sources.
Exactly. And I hope our listeners will accept that invitation and continue this exploration on their own.
It feels like we've uncovered more questions than answers here.
That's true.
But I guess isn't that the point of a deep dive?
Yeah.
To really kind of wrestle with these complexities.
Totally. And I think, it speaks to this bigger challenge that we're all facing right now in this era of hyper-partisan media.
Right.
Like, how can individuals cut through all the noise and really form their own informed opinions?
Especially when you have outlets like Fox News.
Right.
That have such a devoted following.
Yeah. How do you determine what's credible when you're just constantly bombarded with information?
Right.
So much of which is, deliberately skewed or even fabricated.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
It is, and it's one that we're all grappling with. There's no simple solution or easy answer.
Right.
But I think it starts with recognizing that we can't just passively consume information.
Okay.
We need to be active participants, critically evaluating what we're seeing and hearing.
So don't just take things at face value.
Right.
Even if it's coming from a source that you generally trust.
Exactly. Question everything. Consider multiple perspectives. And be willing to change your mind.
Oh, that's a good one.
When presented with, new evidence or a more compelling argument.
Yeah, be open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
Yeah.
It's humbling.
It is.
But also kind of liberating.
It is, because it frees you from that need to always be right.
Right.
And allows you to focus on learning and understanding.
Yeah.
And part of that learning process, I think, is acknowledging our own biases.
Oh, for sure.
We all have them, and they can really unconsciously influence how we interpret information.
So recognize those blind spots.
Yeah, those ingrained ways of thinking that might prevent us from seeing things clearly. Be willing to challenge those blind spots, to actively seek out information that might contradict our preconceived notions.
Right.
Or make us uncomfortable. That's where real growth happens.
It's like stepping outside of your comfort zone and embracing the discomfort of being wrong.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the goal isn't to be right all the time, it's to be informed.
Well said. And, it's not just about finding some, ultimate truth with a capital T.
Right.
Because, when it comes to these complex issues like politics and current events, truth is often nuanced and multifaceted.
Yeah, there rarely is a single definitive answer.
Exactly. So embrace the gray areas, the ambiguities, the uncertainties, and become comfortable with the idea that we might not always have all the answers.
Right.
That's part of the beauty of being human.
Okay.
We're constantly learning, evolving, and adapting our understanding of the world.
It's a journey, not a destination.
There you go.
And maybe the journey is more important than the destination anyway.
I think you might be right about that.
Okay, so we've spent this deep dive unpacking the controversies swirling around Fox News.
We have.
But, as we've said, it's just a snapshot of a much larger issue.
Yeah.
We're all navigating this increasingly complex and often overwhelming media landscape, and it's not always easy to find solid footing.
It's not.
So what's one key takeaway that our listeners can walk away with?
Okay.
What's one thing they can do starting today to become more discerning consumers of information?
I would suggest this. Find a news source that you typically disagree with.
Okay.
A website, a TV channel, a podcast, and commit to spending just 15 minutes a week consuming their content.
Okay.
But here's the key. Don't approach it with the intent to argue or debunk their perspective. Try to genuinely understand their arguments, their values, where they're coming from.
It's like an empathy challenge for your media consumption.
I love that, because who knows, you might be surprised by what you learn. You might even discover some common ground.
It's food for thought, for sure.
It is. And I hope it's a meal that nourishes our listeners' minds.
Yeah.
And inspires them to continue exploring the vast and fascinating world of information.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another journey into the heart of a compelling topic. Until then, stay curious.